Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a strange little thought experiment together. Imagine going to bed in your normal, everyday life, and then waking up somewhere else entirely. But not just anywhere. You open your eyes, and you're in a bed that could swallow your whole apartment. Drapes heavy as winter coats hang from a gilded canopy. A fireplace crackles without a care for your utility bill. Somewhere far off, a grandfather clock ticks in a rhythm you've never heard before. The air smells faintly of beeswax and polished oak, and there's a softness under your head so perfect. You wonder if your pillow was grown on a cloud farm. Honestly, you wouldn't survive 5 minutes, not because of danger, but because you'd spend them just staring at the embroidery on the curtains. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling extra generous, drop a comment with where you are and what time it is right now. I love seeing who's listening out there in the dark. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes wider, blinking against the gentle golden light spilling through a towering window. The early sun filters through thick lace curtains, tracing warm patterns onto a polished wood floor that gleams like still water. A Persian rug stretches from your bedside all the way to a deep green velvet chaise, sitting there as if its only purpose is to host a pair of slippers. The room is so large that you can hear the faint echo of your own movement as you shift against the mattress. From somewhere nearby comes a soft knock. 3 evenly spaced taps, polite enough not to startle you, but firm enough to say, "You are not alone." You turn your head as a door of dark oak, twice your height, eases open. A silver-haired man, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, steps inside. His face is as composed as a marble bust, but his eyes hold the faint glint of assessment. He bows slightly, then says in a low, steady voice, "Good morning, sir. Breakfast is ready." Takes a few seconds for the word "sir" to sink in. Your mind still clings to the drifting scraps of last night's dream. But this is no dream. As you sit up, your hand brushes against the cool smoothness of silk sheets, their edges stitched with threads of gold. On your finger sits a massive gold ring, set with a deep blue stone. Not something you've ever bought. Not something you could ever afford. Yesterday. The man, Harris, he introduces himself, gestures toward the hallway. You follow, passing along a corridor lined with oil portraits of stern-faced strangers whose eyes seem to follow you. The polished floor creaks softly beneath your steps, the silence broken only by the steady chime of a grandfather clock. At the dining table, a vast arrangement of white lilies sends their sweet, almost sharp scent into the air. Harris pulls out a chair for you. Before you is a plate of golden eggs, thick-cut sausages, crisp toast, and a steaming cup of coffee. The spread looks like something from a 5-star hotel, yet there are other dishes you can't even identify. One resembles oatmeal. Another is a jewel-toned jelly molded into intricate shapes. As you lift the cup, Harris says matter-of-factly, "You have an appointment at the steel mill at 9 o'clock. You freeze. Steel mill? Instantly, images flash, roaring furnaces, showers of sparks, iron beams the size of railway tracks. You almost ask him who you are, but you stop yourself. Better to watch, to listen, because in this world, everyone seems to know you as someone powerful, and power, you suspect, means knowing more than you reveal. The silver spoon clinks gently against porcelain. And in that sound, you realize something. This is only the beginning of a day that will stretch far beyond anything you ever imagined. And no one here will give you the chance to catch your breath. The face staring back at you from the mirror isn't yours. It's close enough to unsettle you. The shape of the jaw, the arch of the brow, but fuller, older, polished like a portrait that's been varnished 100 times. a neatly combed wave of dark hair streaked with silver, a mustache curled to perfection, each tip waxed into obedient symmetry. The silk dressing gown you're wearing falls open just enough to reveal a crisp monogram on your nightshirt pocket. 3 embroidered letters you've never seen before. Harris stands at a discreet distance, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed not on you but on your reflection. "You'll want to be ready in half an hour, sir," he says, as though this sort of morning, this version of you, is entirely routine. Your hands move almost of their own accord, tracing the fabric, feeling the weight of a gold chain hanging from your neck. It's attached to a pocket watch which you click open. Inside, a tiny portrait, a woman in high Victorian fashion, lips pressed together in a smile too controlled to be entirely warm. Her eyes, however, are sharp. You shut the watch before she can look too long at you. The dressing room smells faintly of bay rum and starch, the kind of scent that feels deliberate, curated. You glance toward the wardrobe. Row upon row of tailored suits in deep navy, charcoal, and black, each hanging with military precision. There are hats on a stand by the window, toppers, bowlers, even a wide-brimmed straw for summer. A pair of polished leather shoes rests on a wooden stand, their toes so shiny they practically blink at you. Downstairs, Harris walks you through a breakfast conversation you weren't really part of. Names of men you've never met, references to last night's market numbers, and a casual remark about the governor's visit as though it's just another Thursday errand. You nod in a way you hope looks natural. When he leads you outside, the morning air hits you, colder than expected, carrying the faint tang of coal smoke. The street is lined with stately elms and houses so large they could each be a courthouse. Your driveway is absurdly long, paved in smooth cobblestone. At the end of it waits a carriage, though not the kind you've seen in period dramas. This one is lacquered black, drawn by 2 massive bay horses whose breath steams in the chill. As you climb in, Harris hands you a folded newspaper. The front page headline is a name, your name, paired with a bold line about expanding the steel empire. Beneath it, a grainy photograph of the man from the mirror, the man you're supposed to be. The carriage lurches forward. The clip-clop of hooves echoes down the street, the rhythmic sound blending with the creak of the wheels. As the houses give way to busier blocks, the smells shift. From morning dew to fresh bread to the sharp bite of iron and soot. And then, for the first time, you hear it, the low, steady thrum in the distance. The sound grows louder with each turn. By the time the carriage stops, you're staring at a sprawling complex of red brick buildings. Tall smokestacks pump dark clouds into the pale sky. Somewhere deep inside, metal screams and hammers sing. "Your mill, sir," Harris says, opening the door. You step down onto solid ground, the cobblestones vibrating faintly under your shoes. This is the heart of something enormous, something loud and alive and, judging by the smell alone, dangerous. And according to everyone here, Harris doesn't follow you inside. Perhaps a silent acknowledgement that what happens in the mill is a different kind of business entirely. The foreman leads you through an iron gate, and suddenly the world tilts into heat and motion. The air is thick with the scent of coal, oil, and sweat. Sparks leap like fireflies on a sugar rush. Massive vats of molten steel glow the color of a setting sun, and when one tips, the liquid metal flows in a slow, almost lazy ribbon, as if time itself pauses to watch. You pass rows of men in soot-darkened overalls, their sleeves rolled to the elbow, hands blistered and raw. Each face is locked into a rhythm. Hammer, turn, cool, repeat, as if every heartbeat has been synchronized with the machinery. The noise is beyond loud. It's a living thing that wraps around your ribs and presses into your chest. You feel it in your teeth. The foreman points toward a raised office with glass walls overlooking the factory floor. Inside, a long ledger sits open, lines of neat, spidery handwriting stretching across its pages. Beside it is a stack of envelopes, each sealed with wax. Your morning correspondence. The foreman explains. He says it like this is a daily ritual, a moment when you, the owner, glance at numbers and nod, and the whole operation keeps turning. You skim the figures, profits large enough to make your old life feel like a lemonade stand. But there's another column, disbursements. Wages are there, sure, but so are things labeled special arrangement and civic contribution. Phrases that feel far too polite for what they probably are. A thin man in a bowler hat appears in the doorway, carrying a clipboard. He whispers to the foreman, then glances at you with a flicker of unease before leaving. You catch only a few words. Accident, press, soon. The foreman clears his throat. One of the rollers jammed yesterday. Took a man's hand. Reporters might sniff around. You freeze. It's not that you're shocked accidents happen. It's that this is being delivered to you like a weather report. Routine. Expected. Disposable. From the floor below, a group of men turn to look up toward the office. You realize their eyes are on you, not Harris, not the foreman, you. And it's not hostility you see, nor trust exactly, but the kind of guarded watchfulness people give to the one person who can decide their week's pay with a single signature. The foreman gestures toward a smaller room in the corner of the office. Best if you address the matter with Mr. Keating. He's persuasive with the papers. Inside, the smaller room is surprisingly quiet, insulated from the constant clang outside. A large desk dominates the space, and behind it sits Keating, a man with slicked hair and a smile too precise to be spontaneous. He leans forward. Morning, sir. I understand we've got a story to redirect. You don't know what you're supposed to say, but you nod slowly. Keating produces a folded slip of paper, pushes it toward you. This figure should be enough to encourage a more favorable column. You glance down. The number is obscene. Could buy a house in your time, a big one. Keating's expression doesn't change. Paper boys don't print what their editors won't approve. Editors don't approve what makes them lose their lunch. As you leave the office, you can't shake the sense that this entire building is a kind of engine. Not just for steel, but for stories, for perception, for power itself. And you are somehow seated at the controls. Back outside, the carriage waits, Harris holding the door as if nothing has happened. As you settle in, he says, "The club is expecting you for lunch, sir. Shall I take us straight there?" You nod, though you're not entirely sure you're ready for whatever comes next. The mill fades behind you, its smokestacks still coughing into the pale sky. The clip-clop of hooves takes over again, and you realize the next part of this day isn't going to be any quieter. The carriage slows in front of a building so imposing it could be mistaken for a government hall, except the brass plaque by the entrance simply reads the Metropolitan Club. Harris steps down first, offering his gloved hand to help you out, as if you've done this 100 times before. The sidewalk is swept spotless, the kind of clean that comes from money, not municipal pride. Gas lamps stand like sentinels, even in daylight, their glass polished to a gleam. A doorman in a scarlet coat opens the towering double doors, greeting you by name without hesitation. You've never seen him before. Inside, the air changes, cooler, heavier, and perfumed faintly with pipe tobacco and expensive cologne. Thick carpets swallow the sound of your steps. You follow Harris down a hallway lined with dark walnut panels and portraits of unsmiling men in evening dress. Every one of them has that same unshakable confidence you saw in the mirror this morning. The dining room is vast yet intimate, tables spaced as if each conversation is a state secret. The light is warm but dim, filtered through frosted glass shades. The clink of cutlery is soft, deliberate, a civilized soundtrack to whatever deals are being made here. Your table is already occupied by 3 men. Harris introduces them in a practiced murmur: Mr. Alderman, Mr. Penrose, and Mr. Carrington. Each shakes your hand with a grip calibrated to convey equal parts strength and restraint. Their suits are immaculate, their cufflinks gleaming like small, silent weapons. "Good of you to join us," Alderman says, voice smooth as poured cream. "We were just discussing the rail situation." Penrose leans forward, steepling his fingers. "Your steel's the spine of half the lines running north. But word is a certain party is negotiating with less reputable suppliers." He lets the last three words hang like smoke. Carrington, who has said nothing so far, finally speaks. "We could ensure that doesn't happen, for the right mutual consideration." You find yourself mirroring their body language, nodding as if you understand every unspoken layer of what's being said. The conversation flows with the practiced ease of people who have done this dance for years, swapping information, trading subtle threats, all while the waiter serves oysters on the half shell and a roast that smells like an entire week's salary in your old life. Halfway through, Penrose chuckles over his wine. "Do you remember the Pullman strike? Lord, the chaos." And yet, he glances at you. Certain people came out of it wealthier than they went in. It's a joke and a warning, wrapped in nostalgia. You laugh politely, though you can't help thinking that whatever came out of it wasn't evenly shared. Dessert arrives. A custard so perfectly set it quivers with the gentlest touch of your spoon. The conversation drifts to next week's gala, the latest scandal involving a senator's nephew, and a new law being whispered about in Albany. At one point, Carrington lowers his voice to share something that makes the others nod gravely. You catch only a fragment. "Shipping route through Panama. Entirely ours if the vote goes right." When the plates are cleared, Alderman raises his glass. To stability and to keeping it in the right hands. The toast is short, but the look in their eyes tells you it's less a wish and more an instruction. As you step back out into the daylight, Harris is already holding the carriage door. He doesn't ask about the meeting, he doesn't have to. The quiet between you is filled with the weight of what just happened. "Home, sir?" he asks. You start to answer, but he interrupts himself. "Forgive me, the railway office sent a message. They'd like to see you immediately." The horses turn, and the city begins to blur past. You realize the day is still far from done, and you've barely caught your breath since you woke up. The railway office sits like a brick fortress at the edge of the financial district. 4 stories of arched windows, each framed with ornate stonework, as if the building itself wants to remind the world it has nothing to hide. Which, of course, probably means it has everything to hide. Harris ushers you through the front door into a lobby that smells faintly of paper, ink, and oiled brass. The floor is a checkerboard of marble tiles, polished to a shine that mirrors your shoes. Clerks in starched collars move quickly between tall counters, their arms stacked with ledgers heavy enough to double as self-defense. A heavy-set man with a ruddy face emerges from an inner office, his pocket watch chain swaying with each step. "Good morning, sir," he says with the unctuous cheer of someone who knows the man he's addressing could buy or ruin his career with a shrug. "We've prepared the quarterly summaries for your review." He leads you into a long room lined with shelves of leather-bound volumes. At the center, a vast table groans under the weight of a single ledger so large it looks as though it could anchor a ship. The pages are thick, the handwriting precise, each line marching in perfect formation. The numbers are dizzying, revenues tall enough to blot out the sky, columns of freight shipments, passenger ticket sales, and dividends that could bankroll small countries. But then there's the other side. Maintenance costs, payments to contractors, and a mysterious, recurring entry labeled only assurances. You trail your finger down the page, stopping at a line item so small it might have been overlooked. A payment to something called the Continental Committee with no explanation. The railway man clears his throat. That's just a facilitation matter. Ensures our schedules run smoothly. His tone is light, but there's a subtle tension behind it, the kind that suggests this is not a subject for further inquiry, at least not here. Further down the page, you find a list of employee expenses that reads less like payroll and more like a shopping list for a very specific lifestyle. Imported cigars, cases of champagne, even a private hunting lodge in the Adirondacks. You raise an eyebrow. The man smiles thinly. Client hospitality, sir. Very effective for contract renewals. A small clock on the wall ticks toward noon, and with each second you feel the weight of this ledger pressing on you. Not just in terms of the money, but the decisions hidden in those neat lines of ink. Somewhere in these pages is the machinery of power itself, disguised as arithmetic. The man flips a few more pages and stops at a fresh sheet, blank except for the date. This, he says, is where we note your approval for the next round of commitments. He produces a fountain pen, its gold nib gleaming. You hesitate just long enough for the silence to become noticeable. He clears his throat again, softer this time. It's customary, sir. Your hand hovers over the paper. Somewhere deep inside, the voice of your old life, the one from before you woke up here, mutters something about signatures being promises you can't take back. But the room smells of leather and ink, and the man across from you is smiling that smile again. The one that says not signing will cost you far more than any number on the page. When the pen touches paper, it feels heavier than it should. Moments later, the ledger is closed, the sound of its cover thudding shut like the end of a chapter you didn't know you were in. Harris appears at the doorway, as if he's been waiting for precisely this moment. "Shall we?" he asks. You nod, still feeling the phantom weight of the pen in your hand. As you step back into the bright street, the noise of the city seems sharper, faster. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle calls. A long, low note that reminds you exactly what you've just signed yourself into. The club is the sort of place that pretends not to notice the century changing outside its windows. Dark wood paneling climbs to the ceiling. The chandeliers hang heavy with crystal drops, and the carpets muffle every footstep into a gentleman's hush. Harris leads you past rows of leather chairs, each occupied by men who could buy half the city between lunch and tea. Newspapers are folded neatly beside silver coffee pots, and every conversation seems pitched at the exact volume to keep outsiders from catching more than a word. You are seated at a round table in a corner bay, its window looking out over the park where carriages roll by in slow procession. The waiter brings a bottle of champagne before you've even asked, the cork removed without ceremony. "Old friends," Harris says, gesturing toward the two men already at the table. The first is lean, with a neat beard and eyes the color of flint. He introduces himself simply as Mr. Lockwood, a name you've heard in connection with steel contracts and political donations. The second, heavier and with an easy smile, is Charles Marbury, whose shipping fleet supposedly covers both coasts and a few less reputable ports besides. They greet you warmly, though there's a studied quality to it, like actors playing a part they've performed hundreds of times. You've barely taken a sip when Lockwood leans forward. "Tell me," he says, "what's your view on the matter of the freight rates? There's talk of reform in Albany." "Dangerous talk." Marbury waves a hand. "Dangerous to those without the right friends, certainly, but dangerous to us? Only if we let it be." Harris watches you, silent but alert. You realize this is not idle chatter, it's a test. You choose your words carefully, speaking just enough to suggest you understand the stakes, not enough to betray ignorance. The conversation flows on, touching on rail subsidies, port fees, and the sudden, unexplained collapse of a rival company's warehouse in Jersey. No one says arson, but no one says it wasn't either. Lunch arrives, roast duck with orange glaze, and the tone shifts. Marbury tells a story about a dinner in Paris where a countess wagered her pearls on a hand of cards. Lockwood offers a dry comment about American women never risking their jewels unless they're insured twice over. Laughter follows, easy but thin. Halfway through the meal, Lockwood produces a folded sheet from his pocket and slides it across the table to Harris, who glances at it before passing it to you. It's a list of names. Some you recognize from the newspapers, others you don't, but everyone has the air of someone whose decisions matter. Upcoming guests, Lockwood says. Worth knowing who's worth knowing. Before dessert, the waiter appears with a small silver tray bearing 3 sealed envelopes, one for each of you. Harris opens his and nods. Marbury smiles as he tucks his away without reading it. When you break the seal on yours, you find a single card inside. It bears only a date, an address, and the embossed image of a railway wheel. Harris raises his glass. To profitable evenings, he says. The champagne tastes sharper now, almost metallic. The address on the card leads you far from the club's polished calm. By nightfall, the gas lamps are glowing, and the streets have taken on that particular hush of a city holding its breath. Your cab drops you in front of what appears to be an abandoned freight depot. Brick walls soot-darkened from decades of coal smoke. Windows shuttered with heavy iron grates. Only the faint glow of a single lamp over the side entrance suggests life within. You knock once as instructed. Panel slides open at eye level. 2 seconds of scrutiny, then the door clicks. Inside, the air smells faintly of machine oil and wet stone. The corridor bends sharply before opening into a vast space that must once have housed freight platforms. Now, the platform is gone, replaced by a polished oak table stretching the length of the room. Around it sit a dozen men and women, bankers, brokers, shipping magnates, and, unless your eyes deceive you, a state senator whose name has lately been linked to a corruption inquiry. At the far end of the table stands a man in a dark frock coat. His hair is silver, though he cannot be much older than 50. He doesn't introduce himself. He simply gestures for you to sit. Harris is already here, as are Lockwood and Marbury. No champagne this time, just a decanter of dark liquor and small glasses set before each seat. The man at the head of the table begins speaking without preamble. He talks of contracts soon to be awarded, of rail lines poised to cut weeks off shipping routes, of strikes that will be broken before they begin. But his tone is not persuasive, it's declarative. These are not plans, they are certainties. When he finally pauses, he lifts a sheet from the table and turns it so you can see. It is a map of the city, marked with rail lines, warehouses, and ports, but also with shaded blocks that you recognize as entire neighborhoods. These, he says, tapping the shaded areas, are under our protection. No vote passes, no cargo moves, no debt is forgiven without this table's blessing. A murmured assent passes around the room. Someone refills your glass. You are not asked to speak, only to listen, but the message is clear. Tonight, you have been invited to witness the architecture of power. The kind built quietly, without public record, yet more enduring than any law. At the close of the meeting, the silver-haired man says only, "You will find that your interests and ours need not conflict, provided you understand the terms." Outside, the night feels colder. Somewhere in the dark, a train whistle sounds, long, low, and final. The following morning, you wake to the sound of someone pounding on your door. 3 sharp knocks, a pause, then 2 more. When you open it, a boy no older than 12 stands in the hall, cap in hand, clutching a sealed envelope. No return address, no wax seal, only your name in an elegant hand you don't recognize. Inside is a single card. Do not go to your office today. Do not be seen in the exchange. Wait, no signature. You glance at the boy, but he is already retreating down the stairs. By noon, the reason becomes clear. Word spreads through the streets. Federal agents have raided the exchange, seizing ledgers and arresting half a dozen brokers. A crowd has gathered, craning to see the men in handcuffs, some shouting in outrage, others laughing like it's a theater show. Among the names whispered is one you know well, a man you dined beside only nights ago. By dusk, the papers are full of headlines about sweeping reform and corruption exposed. But you notice the omissions. No mention of the silver-haired man. No mention of Harris, Lockwood, or Marbury. Not even a hint that last night's gathering took place. The silence feels deliberate, protective. You are sitting by the window, paper in hand, when a figure appears across the street. A woman in a dark traveling coat, gloved hands folded before her. She is watching your building with the stillness of a statue. When she finally turns away, she drops something into the gutter. A folded scrap of paper weighted with a coin. You wait until she is gone before retrieving it. It reads, "Your invitation was not without cost. We will collect when the time comes." And beneath, in smaller letters, "Do not mistake safety for freedom." Comes 3 nights later. Not with a letter, not with another watchful figure across the street, but with the sound of a carriage pulling up outside your door long past midnight. No knock, no call, just the dull clatter of hooves, then silence. When you look down from the upper window, you see the same black carriage from that evening at the exchange. Lanterns dim, curtains drawn. The driver sits motionless, his hat brim shadowing his face. A voice drifts up from the darkness below. Calm, certain. Come now. The words are not loud, yet they carry into your bones. Without needing to be told that if you refuse, they will come inside. And that whatever they have to collect will not wait for your convenience. Downstairs, the door opens before you can touch the handle. The driver is already standing there, holding it wide, his gloved hand gesturing toward the carriage interior. Inside, the seats are empty save for a single object resting in the center. A small, wooden box, the kind used for jewelry or heirlooms. When you sit opposite it, the door closes with a soft click. The carriage begins to move. The lid of the box is not locked, but when you lift it, you wish it had been. Inside lies a folded piece of paper, stained at one corner. You open it expecting words. Instead, you find a detailed charcoal drawing of your own face. Not as you are now, but as you will be. The eyes are sunken, the skin sallow, the mouth sewn shut with fine black thread. On the reverse, a single sentence. The silence you owe will be paid in full. The carriage rolls on without a word from the driver. The steady rhythm of the wheels like a slow, deliberate clock. You try to gauge your direction, but the route twists and doubles back, as if meant to disorient. When it finally stops, the air smells of salt and tar. Somewhere nearby, water laps against wooden pilings. The door opens to a pier slick with rain. At its far end, a single warehouse leans against the night, its windows blacked out. The driver gestures for you to walk ahead. Inside, the space is vast and empty, except for a long table lit by one hanging lantern. At the table's center sits the silver-haired man. No mask this time, no pretense. Around him are 5 others, each with the still, watchful bearing of people who do not need to speak to be obeyed. On the table before them lies a ledger unlike any you've seen. The pages are not lists of transactions, but names crossed out in red, others underlined in black. Your name sits near the top of the current page. Beneath it, in the same elegant hand that wrote your first note, silent service rendered, debt outstanding. The silver-haired man leans forward, his eyes catching the lamplight. You were spared for a reason, he says, and now that reason requires you. He pushes the ledger toward you. You will sign here, tonight. In doing so, you agree to omissions, edits, rearrangements of truth. His tone makes it clear. Refusal is not part of the arrangement. From somewhere deep in the warehouse comes the sound of water dripping. Slow, steady. It echoes in the silence between you. You will never speak of what you saw, he says, and you will write what we place before you, word for word. No more, no less. The pen waits beside the ledger. Its nib is black with fresh ink or something darker. The silver-haired man slides a sheet of paper across the table. It is blank at first. Then, as you hold it in the lantern light, faint lines begin to emerge, as if soaked up from beneath the page. They form sentences, dates, a name you recognize. The obituary is written in your own hand, yet you have never seen it before tonight. The name belongs to a man you passed on the street just yesterday. Alive, well, carrying a satchel of fresh bread. Here, in this assignment, he is said to have died quietly in his sleep. The cause, undisclosed. The date of death, tomorrow. Your pulse pounds. This isn't your concern, the silver-haired man interrupts. It is your task. One of the silent figures steps forward, placing a fresh pen in your hand. His grip lingers, too firm, almost cold. You will copy it exactly, the man says. Your handwriting will carry the weight of truth when others see it. You glance at the paper again. At the bottom of the obituary, there is already a space for your signature. You realize it is not a request for endorsement. It is a binding. The others stand motionless as you write, their shadows stretching long across the damp wooden floor. When you finish the last letter, the silver-haired man takes the sheet and folds it neatly. It will be printed before dawn, he says, and when it is, events will follow as written. A distant gull cries from somewhere beyond the pier. The sound is thin, almost human. The man closes the ledger without looking at you. Your silence is now their silence, he says, and their silence is yours. The morning paper arrives before the sun. It slides beneath your door with the soft scrape of newsprint on stone, a sound you now dread. On page 3, exactly where the silver-haired man said it would be, the obituary sits nestled between wedding announcements and shipping schedules. Your handwriting stares back at you, perfect and unquestioned. By midday, the city changes. The baker's stall, the one where you saw the man yesterday, is shuttered. His apprentices stand in the alley, whispering, eyes darting to the corners where shadows collect. That night, word spreads quickly. He was found in his bed, no signs of struggle, no sign of entry, just gone, as if the obituary had called him into it. 3 days later, another sheet appears under your door. This time, there is no faint ink to guide you. It is blank. Yet you understand without being told you are to write it yourself. When you hesitate, the world seems to notice. A black carriage waits at the end of your street, though no driver sits on its bench. In the window across from yours, a shape leans forward, watching, unmoving. By nightfall, the air in your room feels heavy, pressing against your chest. And somewhere, faintly, you hear the drip of water, slow and steady, like the ticking of a clock that counts only down. The paper lies before you. The pen waits. The silence expects. You leave the page blank. For hours, you sit at your desk, staring at it under the flickering light of a single candle. Outside, the city falls into its usual night sounds. Creaking shutters, distant footsteps, the restless groan of the harbor's timbers. Yet something in the rhythm feels off, as though the world is listening. Near midnight, the first knock comes, not at your door, but from inside the walls. You freeze. The sound moves, a slow, deliberate tapping, traveling behind the plaster, across the length of your room. It stops just beside your chair. A voice, low and dry as paper sliding over paper, whispers, "Write." You turn and see the candle's flame bend, as if bowing toward the blank sheet. The pen has moved. It now rests in the center of the page, its nib pointed at you. You stand abruptly. The chair tips over. From the far corner, shadows detach themselves from the wall and take form. Tall, thin silhouettes with no features, yet each tilts its head in the same slow, accusing motion. The knock returns, this time at the door. 3 times. The wood trembles, but the latch does not move. When you find your voice, it comes out cracked. "I won't." The nearest silhouette steps closer. The air around it smells faintly of salt and damp rope, as though the sea clings to its presence. It leans close, and though it has no mouth, you feel the words against your ear. "Then you will take their place." Behind you, the pen scratches across the paper, writing without a hand to guide it. You watch, horror tightening your throat, as the obituary forms in your own handwriting. Only this time, it bears your name. Your name, inked in perfect, deliberate strokes, stares up at you from the page. The candle's light trembles, spilling shadows across the walls, each one leaning closer, eager to see your reaction. You force yourself to speak, though your throat feels too tight. "What does it mean?" The tallest silhouette tilts its head, a movement almost human, but too smooth, too measured. It points to the empty space beneath your name. Where the words end, it says, "You will begin." You think of the baker, of his quiet disappearance, of the way his stall sits abandoned like a tooth pulled from the city's jaw. The others, their names never spoken aloud again, not even in mourning. "You kill people with ink," you say, trying to make it sound like an accusation. But the shadow nearest you only whispers, "We free them from the burden of time." The pen still rests on the page, its nib glistening. You realize, with a cold shiver, that it has been dipped, though you have no ink well. A drop slides down its tip and lands on the paper, blooming dark, red, and warm. The candle sputters. The air grows heavier, and in that silence, a strange thought pushes into your mind. Not your own, but sharp and insistent. If you write another's name, yours will fade. It is not a bargain spoken aloud. It is a rule pressed directly into the back of your skull. The page waits. The city sleeps. Somewhere outside, the black carriage wheels turn on the cobblestones. It has already chosen which door it will stop at. All that remains is for your hand to decide whether it will be yours. Your fingers hover over the pen. It seems to breathe against your skin, its weight subtly shifting as though urging you forward. The rule pounds in your head like a heartbeat. Write another's name and yours will fade. You test the thought. If it's true, then all you need to do is choose someone. Anyone. The shadows stand in patient silence, their featureless faces unreadable. But you sense something behind that stillness, a hunger they can't quite conceal. You think of your landlord, who hasn't fixed the leaking roof in months, of the merchant who cheated you on a shipment of paper, of the guard who once made you kneel in the mud just to prove he could. You lift the pen. The moment its nib touches the page, the shadows lean forward in unison. The air grows tight, electric. The candle flame stretches, tall and rigid. You write a single letter, and stop. From somewhere deep within the wall, that tapping sound returns. Only now it's quicker, more urgent, as if something inside is straining to get out. You set the pen down. The shadows remain motionless, but you feel the pressure of their attention. They know you've hesitated. They know the name you almost wrote. Then, softly, almost tenderly, one of them speaks. "We can help you choose." A second voice follows, lower, dripping with promise. We know the ones who deserve it. From the far corner, a third. We know the ones you secretly wish would vanish. The candle flickers, and in the waxy light, a dozen more names begin to appear on the page, none written by your hand, but each of them familiar. The names glisten wetly, as though written in something thicker than ink. Each letter curves with unsettling precision, too neat for any trembling human hand. You scan the list. The first few are almost expected: the merchant, the guard, the landlord. Petty grudges dressed up as justice. But then, your stomach knots. The candle hisses. There it is. A name you've never spoken aloud. Not to anyone. Not even to yourself in the lonely safety of thought. Yet here it sits, coiled in perfect script, staring back at you. The shadow nearest the candle leans just far enough for its edge to ripple. It does not point. It does not speak. It only waits, as if certain you will notice on your own. You do, and suddenly the air feels too thin. That name is supposed to be untouchable, sacred, off the board. The kind of name you keep buried because to even imagine it in certain contexts is dangerous. Not possible, you whisper. The word possible feels clumsy and wrong in your mouth. A slow rustle passes among the silhouettes, like the turning of invisible pages. One of them tilts its head. We do not need to hear it, it says. We only need to see where your eyes pause. Your hands grow clammy. You're no longer sure whether you're holding the pen or if it's holding you. The candle flame shrinks, almost as if ducking away from what's about to happen. The room feels smaller now, not because the walls have moved, but because the shadows have drawn in. Their edges blur, melting into one another until they form a single, unbroken ring around you. The pen's nib hovers a hair above the page. It trembles, though whether from your hand or its own will, you can't tell anymore. Your gaze keeps sliding back to that one name. Each time your eyes pass over it, the letters seem darker, heavier, as though they're sinking into the paper like stones into deep water. You already thought it, one shadow murmurs. It is already halfway done. You shake your head. That's not true. Another shadow leans closer, so close you can feel the cold radiating from it. A cold that isn't temperature but the absence of something you can't name. It is always true. The mind is the first pen. The page before you ripples slightly, though no breeze moves through the room. The candle's flame gutters sideways, not from wind, but from the pull of something unseen. You tell yourself to drop the pen, walk away, leave the room, but your hand lowers anyway. Not all the way, just enough for the nib to graze the tail of the final letter in that forbidden name. It leaves the faintest mark, an almost invisible hook. The shadows sigh, not in disappointment, but in relief. Somewhere behind you, the tapping inside the wall grows frantic. A scratching joins it, sharp, deliberate, like claws testing the edges of their cage. The candle dims further. You are certain you have just begun something that will not stop. The first crack is so small you might have missed it, a hairline fracture running up the plaster beside the candle. Creeps upward with a sound like distant ice breaking. The scratching stops. For a moment, the silence is worse. Then, a slow, deliberate push from within. The wall bulges outward, plaster dust drifting like pale ash into the candlelight. You step back, pen still clutched in your hand. The shadows shift with you, keeping the same tight ring. You realize now they are not blocking your escape. They are watching it. The bulge in the wall splits, not with a crash, but with the almost polite sound of paper tearing. What emerges first is wrong. It has the shape of a hand, but its fingers are too long, too thin, bending in places no joint should bend. The skin, if it's skin, is paper pale, scored with fine black lines like ink bled into parchment. Another hand follows, gripping the edges of the opening, pulling the rest of it through. When its head appears, you understand the tapping. The thing's face is flat, no nose, no mouth, only a smooth surface where features should be. But in the center, just above where the eyes would be, a circle of black ink swirls slowly, as though being written in real time. The swirl pauses, tilts toward you. Somewhere in the dark ring, the black deepens, and a second shape emerges inside it. A smaller, sharper curve. A letter, the first letter of your name. The letter glistens wetly, as though freshly inked. You blink, and another stroke appears beside it. A perfect, deliberate line that curves into the second letter of your name. It isn't drawing fast, savoring it. Your grip on the pen tightens until your knuckles ache. For a fleeting moment, you think of crossing the room and scrawling something else, anything else on the page, as if you could overwrite whatever this is. But your legs refuse to move. They've gone cold and heavy, as though the shadows have pooled inside them. The creature's hands press against the wall on either side of the opening. Long fingers flex, nails or claws, dragging slow scratches down the plaster. The sound is deliberate, paced, a sound you recognize now from the tapping in the wall. Not asking to be let out, but measuring the time between each letter. Your name is almost half finished. The ink on its face doesn't stay still. The black lines ripple faintly, as though the surface of its skin is a thin layer of water disturbed by something moving beneath. By the time the pen inside its face reaches the next curve, you notice something worse. The ink is no longer confined to its head. Thin black veins are beginning to thread down its neck, branching toward its chest, tracing shapes you almost recognize. Words. The moment you realize they're written in the same handwriting as yours, the candle flickers, and every shadow in the room leans closer at once. The final curve of your name bleeds into existence, dark and deliberate. The instant the last letter closes, the air in the room changes, thickens, as though someone just sealed the door with wet clay. Your ears pop. The candle's flame does not flicker this time. It stretches, pulls into a thin, trembling line that points directly toward the creature's face. It steps through the wall without resistance, not climbing, not crawling, simply passing, as though the plaster and wood were only painted air. The black writing has spread across its chest now, spiraling into dense, overlapping lines. Even without reading them, you know what they are. Every word you have ever written, journal entries, letters never sent, notes scrawled in the margins of books. They move across its body like an eel beneath skin, disappearing only to reappear somewhere else. The creature tilts its head toward you, and the circle of ink in place of eyes contracts. A voice comes, not from its body, but from the paper in your hand. You look down. Your journal is open to a page you do not remember writing. The handwriting is yours. The words are not. They say, "If you stop writing, I will have to take the rest from you." When you look up again, it's standing much closer. You don't ask what it means. You already know. The knowing comes the way a nightmare's logic does, sudden, whole, and without explanation. The rest isn't your possessions. It isn't the room, or the house, or the thin candle trembling between you. It's you. The creature's face, that shifting field of ink, ripples again. This time, the motion pulls downward, and a mouth begins to form where there was none. It doesn't open. It spills. A slow stream of black letters slides from the tear in its face, dripping to the floor without sound. They land, coil, and begin to crawl toward you like beetles. The first one touches your shoe and dissolves into it. You feel the cold instantly, not in your skin, but behind your eyes, as if a word has just been erased from your memory. The creature steps closer. You back away, and it follows without lifting its feet, gliding on the slow tide of letters that now cover the floor. Every step you take costs you something small: a street name you knew, a face from childhood, a scent you loved but can't place anymore. By the time your back hits the wall, you understand that the candlelight is the only thing keeping the letters from climbing higher. And the flame is beginning to lean. The candle doesn't gutter or smoke. It bends. The flame leans toward the creature as if pulled by a silent breath, stretching longer, thinner, until it is a single taut thread of light. Then it snaps. There is no darkness. Not at first. The room remains lit, but wrong. The colors dulled. The corners deepened into an impossible distance. The shadows no longer match the shapes that cast them. Your own silhouette stands beside you, its head tilted toward the creature, not toward you. The letters on the floor surge. They climb your ankles, your calves, your knees, wrapping in spirals that pulse faintly, like veins. You try to shake them off, but they cling, pulling with a weight far greater than their size. The creature moves without haste, each step erasing another sound from the air. By the time it's close enough to touch you, the room is so quiet that you can hear the faint scratching of the words shifting across its body. It leans in. The ink of its face spreads outward, thinning, until it becomes a mirror. You see yourself, but your reflection is writing. Not on paper, on you. It uses a quill made from the same shadow that spills from its hands, tracing lines into your skin. The marks sink beneath the surface, black fading to blue, blue to nothing, leaving you unable to tell where the letters end and you begin. You open your mouth to speak, to scream, to ask, but the sound doesn't leave. It's already on the page. The creature tilts its head, as though admiring its work. Its mouth, if it can be called that, opens wider than before, not to pour out more letters, but to draw in a breath so deep that the air around you shivers. Then it begins to read. The voice is not a sound but a pressure, a slow push that seeps into the bones of the room. You feel it more than hear it, like standing too close to a cathedral bell that's rung inside your chest. As it speaks, the letters it carved into you ignite in a cold, bluish glow. The light spreads, spidering across your arms, your ribs, your throat. Each phrase feels like a command written into your marrow. The room obeys. The walls bend, not breaking, not creaking, simply folding away like paper. Beyond them is not night, not sky, but a vast, depthless field of the same black ink that makes the creature's face. In it, shapes move enormous, slow, and unrecognizable, as if you are watching thoughts drift through the mind of something older than the world. The floor ripples under you, no longer solid but not yet liquid. You feel it pulling, urging you forward. The creature stops reading. The glow in your skin fades, leaving the faint memory of the words, like heat long after the fire's gone out. It steps aside, not in retreat but in invitation. Whatever is beyond those folded walls is waiting for you. And, with the certainty of a memory you've never had, that if you step through, you will not come back as yourself. You step forward. The moment your foot leaves the floor, it is caught, not by liquid, not by ground, but by something that yields just enough to accept you before holding fast. It's like stepping into wet parchment, warm from being handled too long. The blackness underfoot shimmers faintly, revealing that it isn't nothing at all. It's writing, millions of tiny characters, some familiar, others in alphabets you've never seen, scroll beneath the surface in a ceaseless current. They flow in all directions, as though the field is not a place but a page that is constantly being written and unwritten. The air tastes metallic, like the tang of blood pressed against your tongue. You take another step, and the words beneath you react. The nearest ones twist, curl upward, and cling to your skin as if recognizing you. They are warm, and they move, sliding along your ankle up your calf, settling at your knee like obedient animals awaiting a signal. The creature follows at a distance, its body now entirely unreadable, as though your crossing has blurred its edges. It doesn't speak, but you feel it watching, not guiding you, not guarding you, simply witnessing. In the far distance, something stirs in the ink. A swell forms, pushing the flowing letters aside. It moves toward you, slow at first, then faster, its approach disturbing the surface like wind on water. The swell breaks. What rises is not a figure, but a tower, constructed entirely of bound books, their spines cracked, their pages whispering in a language that seems to be spoken directly into your bones. At the top, a single page tears free and begins to drift down toward you. It's blank, but you feel with perfect certainty that it is meant for you to fill. The page lands in your hands with no weight at all, so light it almost isn't there. Its edges are warm, as though it had been waiting in someone's pocket for a very long time. The creature stops a few paces away, tilts its head, and for the first time since you saw it, the surface stills completely. No ripples, no shifting ink, no restless letters. The silence here is not the silence of an empty room. It's the silence of 1,000 people holding their breath. Your thumb runs along the page's edge. It isn't quite paper. It's softer, fibrous, like something that once lived. You lower your gaze to the surface, expecting lines or some faint watermark. Instead, the texture begins to rise under your touch, words forming of their own accord, each one denting the page outward toward you. They are not in your handwriting. They are not in any handwriting at all. The first word is your name. The second is left. The third is burning. The rest come faster, tumbling into existence as though poured from a hidden mouth. Phrases you recognize from old dreams, descriptions of places you have never been, and one line that chills you so thoroughly you nearly drop the page. This is the last thing you will choose. The creature raises one arm, or what should be an arm, and the black surface of its body splits, revealing an identical page, already filled with words, already sealed. It offers it to you. One is blank. One is complete. Somewhere far above, you hear the candle's flame sputter, the sound reaching you as if it were underwater. You understand the rules without anyone telling you, right? And the story will become yours. Accept the finished page, and you will belong to someone else's. Your fingers hover between the two pages. The blank one feels alive, as if it's waiting to drink from your pulse. The completed one radiates a strange, heavy calm, the stillness of something already decided. The creature does not move, could wait forever. You reach for the blank page first. Its surface warms instantly, as though the fibers beneath your fingertips have started to breathe. The words rise again, unspooling faster than your eyes can follow. But this time you know they're yours. You can feel the pull in your chest, the way the sentences root themselves into you even as they form. And then you see it, lines you don't remember writing, descriptions of things you never thought, memories you never lived, actions you would never take. The page is writing back. You pull your hand away, but the words keep growing, up your wrist, across your arm, curling like dark vines beneath your skin. The creature tilts its head again, and the corners of its form begin to tremble, not like laughter, not like anger, but something older, like a ritual that's almost complete. The completed page in its other hand shivers once, and you understand that the choice was never between writing or accepting. It was between changing and ending. You look up just as the candlelight falters, and for the briefest instant, you see what waits behind the creature. Rows upon rows of figures, each holding their own page, faces lit only by the memory of a flame. The last thing you hear before the dark takes you is the rustle of thousands of pages turning at once. When you wake, there is no ceiling. Above you stretches an endless pale surface, faintly textured, fibers crisscrossing in patterns that shift when you try to focus. The air is thin, too clean, as if nothing here has ever been breathed. You push yourself up. The ground beneath your palms feels both soft and unyielding, and when you glance down, you see ink bleeding outward from your touch, forming letters that curve and straighten with unnatural precision. They're not in your handwriting. They're not in any handwriting at all. They are perfect, mechanical, like they have been waiting for centuries to take this exact shape. You step back. The words follow. Every movement you make becomes a sentence. Every hesitation is recorded in meticulous detail. How long your hand lingers in the air, the way your eyes dart toward the white horizon. And then you notice them, other figures, far away, some walking, some kneeling, some curled into themselves. From here they look like ink blots, but as you squint, you see that they are part of the surface, trapped in the same two-dimensional layer you now stand on, their movements flattened into illustrations, looping endlessly through the same handful of gestures. One turns its head toward you, its mouth opens, and the ink under its feet ripples in your direction, spelling something you can't yet read. The white ground begins to tilt, and you feel yourself sliding toward a place where the paper thins, where something vast and black seeps through from below, and you understand with cold clarity that the page you are on is not the first. The surface buckles under your weight, doesn't tear, not yet, but stretches, sagging downward like wet parchment, fibers straining in long, silent threads. The black beneath it seeps upward, not like liquid, but like smoke that has forgotten how to rise. You try to step back, but the page clings to your feet, the ink beneath you hardening into chains of letters. That wind around your ankles, dragging you deeper into the sag. The figures in the distance are sliding too. Some thrash against the pull, their limbs flaring into jagged strokes. Others simply sink without resistance, their shapes blurring into pools of wordless shadow. The first tear comes without sound, a thin, surgical slit beneath you. From it, the black pours out in a slow bloom, cold and heavy, coiling upward to meet your face. It smells like burnt paper, and something older, something that has been pressed flat for centuries, and is now unfolding. Your footing gives way. The page collapses inward, and you fall, not down, but between. The white above shrinks into a framed rectangle. Like the edge of a book, you are being shut inside. The black closes around you, thick and grainy, filled with shapes that move just out of reach. Somewhere ahead, a light flickers, not white, not warm, but the deep, bruised blue of a flame that burns without heat. And a voice, low, deliberate, begins to read aloud. It is reading you. The voice is not speaking to you. It is speaking you. Each word falls with the weight of a hammer, and where it lands, something changes. It begins with your hands. The skin blurs at the edges, the fingers tapering into strokes of ink so fine. You can almost see the fibers of the page beneath them. Your nails flatten, curl, and peel away, fluttering upward like torn scraps of old parchment. Before dissolving into the dark, you try to pull your hands back into yourself, to clench them into fists, but the voice moves on to your arms. The bones lengthen, then soften, as if rewritten into a form that remembers being something else entirely. Your breath catches. The sound is not a gasp, it's a sentence. A line of text leaves your mouth in a thin ribbon, spinning away into the black, where unseen fingers pluck it from the air and press it flat into some unseen ledger. Then it reaches your name. You feel it, buried deep in the marrow of you, pulled to the surface like a splinter. The voice reads it slowly, rolling the syllables in its mouth, stretching them until they mean nothing, until they never meant anything at all. The instant it finishes, a space opens in your mind, cold, echoing, ready for something else to move in. The voice pauses, not to breathe, to choose. Somewhere in the black, you hear the sound of a quill lifting from the page. The first change is small, almost merciful. It removes the scar on your knee, the one you've had since childhood. The memory of how you got it follows the mark into nothing. You are lighter by one story. The next change is not so kind. It straightens your posture, but in doing so, it alters the shape of your spine. You hear the soft crackle of bones rearranging, like lines being rebroken and redrawn. Does not hurt, should hurt, but the sensation is thin, distant, as if the pain has been edited out. Then it begins to adjust your thoughts. A sentence you were certain you knew, your favorite line from a book, your grandmother's parting words, the promise you made to yourself when you were young, is unmade, not forgotten, rewritten. The creature's head tilts, listening for something only it can hear. With each tilt, another part of you changes. Your voice grows lower. Your heartbeat shifts tempo. The way you stand no longer belongs entirely to you. The space in your mind is filling, not with noise, but with a steady, deliberate rhythm, a pulse of ink on paper. You understand now, this isn't possession, it's authorship, and you are not the writer.